premium account on Twitter is required to create a live broadcast on their platform. Is it now? We won't be going live on Twitter then, will we?
Nope.
Remove, save changes. I think we're live already. That was interesting. That was messaging our broadcast service. Welcome, everybody. We'll start again. Welcome to episode number 96 of the WP Café show with me and Keith Devon. That has really thrown me now, by the way, so my intro is just completely gone, but there we go. We're back after a bit of a summer hiatus. We decided that in early August, we didn't really have much to say, and then we went on some holidays, and then we just thought, well, let's just give it up for a bad job for the summer. But we want to get back, and so here we are with episode 96. I hope you're joining us. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so, and then you'll get the latest episodes. Planning to be back every week as usual over the course of the next few months.
Yeah.
So how was your summer then, Keith?
It was good. Yeah, I mean, it kind of whizzed by, but I had a lovely family holiday out in Croatia at the start of the summer. Loved it out there. That was great. And then just pottered around for the rest of the summer, really. Camping trip thrown in there and a few other little bits and pieces. But yeah, it's been pretty chilled. It's been good. How about yourself?
Similar. A couple of holidays. Went to Mallorca at the start of the summer holidays. We might have had an episode after that, actually. And then just got back from Crete in Greece. We went there for 5 days, just for sort of end of summer break before the kids went back to school, which was nice. Very hot.
Was it?
Yeah, they are begging for rain out there in Crete. They said they hadn't rained for like 5 or 6 months.
Wow.
We got like a little shower one of the afternoons, and they were all like, yes, it's raining.
Yeah.
But really good. Really enjoyed it. Nice to wind down, but nice to get back to it as well now, which is good.
Yeah, good.
Getting started.
Yeah, good.
So, we've got a few things to chat about. A few things have been going on in the WordPress world. A few things have been going on in our sort of businessy world. We'll get onto that. If you are joining us live, then please say hello in the chat. Tell us where you're listening from. It's always nice to see folks there. I can see Elliot. Thank you, Elliot, for joining us. Just telling us that little 20-second chat at the start there was actually live. And also Cameron Jones, thank you for joining us. I think, is Cameron in Australia?
I think so.
Must be very evening there then. Anyway.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Hey-ho. Thanks for joining us anyway. So, first of all, we're going to talk about the full site editing project that we have mentioned in the last episode, maybe even the last 2 episodes, actually, how that is going. And the answer is slowly, not massively our fault. I mean, we've been waiting for designs and giving feedback, and that's been quite a much slower process than I think the client or us thought it would be. So we are finally sort of getting round to getting stuck into doing that. In fact, I think I'm right in saying that we've kind of just finalized those this morning, and it's like, right, let's get going.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've got any background about that process that you want to add, Keith?
Build time. Yeah. I mean, it's been interesting watching it. Certainly like the design process. I haven't been, it's just difficult, isn't it? I don't want to disparage anybody or badmouth anybody, especially because I don't know what the agreements were between the design agency and the client. So I've been slightly disappointed in what we've kind of received. Let's put it like that from the designers. And there was, I guess, an opportunity for us to be a bit awkward and dig our heels in. But the approach we've taken is just like, let's just get on with it. Like, the design deliverables aren't perfect. There's gaps. It's not what we were expecting. It's not what we were kind of promised when we spoke to the designers at the start of the project. But there's actually no point in us kicking up any fuss about it because we can just crack on. And that's what we're going to do. I'm excited, but also nervous is probably the wrong word. But we'll discuss it in a minute or two. But just how we're going to approach this build, I think we're still a little. Maybe we have made a decision now, but it's been a bit of a process getting there.
I think that comes to the next point. So, whilst the designs were being finalised, most of the main pages were designed and the discussions going on were relatively minor, really, weren't they? Moving things around pages, which we could do anyway. So some bigger issues, but essentially the main structure was there, and we were trying to look at those designs and break those down into, how are we going to build this bit, that bit, etc. And that's kind of where the big sort of decision points have been, and what decisions we've taken. So I'm going to give a really basic example, and if you want to learn more about this, Keith had a video on our YouTube channel, which she talked about building a card layout. So one of the aspects of the design, as I'm sure it is on most designs, is you have sort of little cards of call to action content, picture, title, possibly a little paragraph, button. And there are various styles of those as well. So some are wider, some have got more information, some have got less information, some have a button, some have a read mode,
Colors get reversed.
Yeah. Sometimes the image is first, sometimes, and various different variations of them. And we looked at those initially and thought they could easily be built with blocks, potentially with block patterns, where the client can just drop, 3 in a row on a page. And that's fine. But our biggest problem with doing that is, let's say we created a pattern and the client drops that onto the page. They then go and create 25 pages with all these patterns on them. And then the client says to us, actually, I don't think that border radius is quite right on those buttons. I think it needs to be increased a little bit or decreased a little bit. At that point, it becomes very difficult to update all those pages at the same time. You'd have to edit each page and then change the border radius, because a pattern is detached from a source, if that makes sense. There's no original source where you can change the design and then update it. And that has been a massive problem for us going forward. How do we do that? So we've settled on ACF blocks, I think.
Can I just interject there, Mark? There is, because this is the obvious thing that everyone's screaming at us, through their TV screen or monitors or whatever, or headphones, is that you can do that now. Overridable synced patterns.
Okay.
So I can now go and change the border radius, and it affects the pattern throughout the whole website. So what's your come back to that?
First of all, that is only saved in the database. So you can't create a file in your theme or in your plugin that is the source of truth of that information. So that means you can't version control stuff, because it's all sorted in the database. That's the main reason for me as to why that's not ideal. Maybe that'll come in the future, but it's not there now.
Yeah. So. Also, for me, is that yes, you can do that, and you can do a fair amount with it, but there's a lot you can't do. There's a lot of CSS that you can't use the UI, the theme or site or block editor for. There's lots and lots of CSS properties that don't have any kind of user interface. So there's that. So then how do we make those changes globally? And now you've got, I can add CSS. I can even add CSS to my theme JSON file. Why the hell you'd want to do that? I don't know, but you can. Or we could create a separate file for that block, but then you can't enqueue that particular. I could go on here, but you can't enqueue easily that block for a particular block style. Or sorry, that CSS for a particular block style. It would always be loaded every time the block's used. There's things like that going on. And then you've got styling in two places. So, okay, I want to change the border radius. Okay, so to change the border radius, I go into the site editor, but now I want to change the, pseudo element that I use for adding this arrow. Okay, I can't do that in the site editor. So that's over here, and that's all version controlled, and that's, my CSS file. It's just
complicated.
It's not a good developer experience.
Yeah.
So that all that stuff and the version controlling and everything, and also what is overridable and what isn't overridable within those patterns. There is actually not very much that you can set as overridable at the moment. So there's lots that you can change. Like it's the stuff that you normally want to do. But I think, what was the example, Mark? We had like we were going to use a paragraph, but we wanted it to be a link within the paragraph or something like that.
Yeah.
And we couldn't. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Remember.
We didn't want to use a button block because there was no style that just basically looked like a text link. So in this particular pattern, it was a text link that said "find out more." So we didn't want to use a button block for that because it's not really a button, and we didn't have a style for that. We could, so we wanted to use a paragraph there, but there's no way to kind of set that as a paragraph with a link, and the paragraph text is the same, but we get to edit the link, as far as I know. So there's all these. Everything felt like a hack and a compromise. And in the end, it's just like, why are we doing this? We know how to build these things. We've done it before. We've done it for massive websites, not massive, relatively massive, like not your local, flower shop, like international kind of brands and things. And it works. And what we have done previously works for us. It works for the client. Why are we forcing ourselves to jump through all these complicated hoops?
Yeah,
I think that comes back to where you were about to go, but what we've kind of settled on for now.
Yeah, so we've settled on using ACF to create a card block, essentially. And all the client has to worry about is putting an image in it, filling in the title, typing in the paragraph text, and probably putting a link in, maybe a link label, if that's decided to go down. And the rest will be handled for them. We could even use the native block styles to give them two versions of that. Whether one's wider, higher, taller, flip the image and the button, whatever it needs to be. We can do that with CSS. And we sat there and thought, well, what's the disadvantage of doing it with ACF, where you have a template that renders it in PHP? And we thought, and tell us if there's another disadvantage, but the only disadvantage is that they can't actually edit the card layout in the site editor.
Yeah,
so they can't change the design or the layout in the editor. But actually, when you come to it, you just think, we don't really want them to do that. And if we did want them to do that,
they don't want to do it.
I don't think they'd be able to do it in the site editor.
No. Building that pattern was so complicated and required, like, the video I did was 30 minutes long. That doesn't take into account the 30 to 60 minutes I spent previously trying to get all that to work and not getting it to work. So I think Elliot commented on the video. He's like, 30 minutes to put that together seems like a win. It was like, what's wrong with that? And I was like, well, it wasn't 30 minutes. Actually, it was more like an hour and a half to get that working. And it really, and I'm a web professional with however many years of experience. Like, I understand Flexbox, I understand grid, I understand positioning, I understand padding and margin, the box model. My client doesn't. So how long would it have taken them to achieve that? And like you say, they go to make a change. They don't know what the impacts of that change are going to be. They might not even think that that's going to change stuff across the site. They might think, I just wanted this to change for the next pattern or on this particular page, and they end up making global changes when they don't know they are. Like, there's all kinds of things like that. And it just, I don't know. Maybe it's just this type of site that we work on is more of the type of site where people want us to make those changes. They're not designers. They're not developers. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm quite happy, actually. I'm sort of disappointed because I always want to try to keep up to date and like do the kind of latest and greatest to some extent. And I was looking forward to trying out some new ways of doing things. But to be honest, it's not really maybe fair on our clients for us to be experimenting like that on the work that we do. So I think we need to deliver the best product, basically, that we can deliver. And I think at the moment, from a maintainability, sustainability point of view, that is doing things the old-fashioned way. But we'll still be using the site editor for like creating templates. We'll still be using blocks. We'll still be, to create the layouts. We'll still be using column blocks and group blocks and blah blah blah, and all the native blocks to do things. But when something is slightly out of the ordinary, we'll probably reach for ACF.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to do it otherwise. I'd love to hear other stories about people, how they go about doing this.
Yeah.
I've yet to hear stories of actually where they can make where they can update things globally and they can go into the site editor and clients do that. I'm just not sure that's the best solution, actually. As much as I want it to be, I don't think the full site editing experience is yet the best solution for our clients. I will emphasize
and for
our clients,
us, not
us,
yeah,
and our projects.
yeah. I agree, and it's not like we're not trying. Like people might say that we're not, but we are. I mean,
yeah.
we
Definitely.
we
We've got
are.
some comments. So, Elliot, thank you for getting involved. If you maintain the same naming conventions for variables in the theme JSON file, all the styles will be respected regardless of where it is used. So I think that means like if you've set padding to be level 1, on a button, it will be that on all the site. So if you go in and change what padding level 1 is, then it will change across the site. And I think this is where I get confused, because when I look at block output, I see a lot of classes on things, and then I also see a lot of inline styles on things, and I'm not sure what controls what and what's been output what. So it becomes very complicated. So an example Elliot gives is, setting the padding might be like, WP preset, whatever you've called this, like, I don't know what the name would be, and then --10. And then so that would be set somewhere, and then that would reflect everything across the site that runs that variable, I presume.
Yeah. I'm not sure.
You'll know more about that than me because it's more your sort of thing. And then it says the selector is kind of like the number that you've given that padding, 2 pixels, 3 pixels, 5 pixels, or whatever. Thank you, Cameron. Next time I'm asked why I refuse to use full site editing for client websites, I'm just going to send them the link to this channel. Thank you. You should send them the link to this channel anyway, Cameron, because it's awesome. But thank you very much.
In a way, I'm not here to try to convince people of any particular way of doing things. I'm not saying that the approach that we've settled on here is correct. Like I don't actually feel particularly comfortable with it in a lot of ways. I'm kind of glad that we've made a decision and we're going to move forward. But yeah, I'm definitely not. We'll talk later in the episode about other people in the WordPress space who are very keen to tell you that their way is the only way.
I think that's important to say, though, at the time, is that this channel is not made to say, this is the way you should do this. This channel is all about what we are doing, how we're doing it, why we're making those decisions. They may or may not be appropriate to you. You might watch this channel, and I hope people do watch this channel and think, oh, that's not for me. That approach is not for me. But maybe you've learned something when you listen to how we've gone about it. Or maybe you do listen to it and think that's exactly how I build sites, and that's kind of backing up my notion of how they should be made. Who knows? But, it's certainly not to tell you what's right and wrong. Derek says, great hearing you talk through this. I've had the same problem myself. Good old ACF to the rescue. Yeah, it kind of works for us at the moment. And then, I can't say that word. It's a philosophy question. Philosophy question. Read. When is visual editing useful? In the end, what tech like block bindings do is to create an additional preview area within the editor for the data that is entered elsewhere. So I think block bindings will allow you to sort of, I'll take jobs as an example. We do a lot with job posts. So you add the salary into a box and it gets saved as metadata. And then you combine that to a block and drop that on your page somewhere. But that doesn't get around the problem that we've just said. So if the user is dropping this salary block, that might be a paragraph block that is bound to this metadata field, and we could create them a pattern which includes that block. So they drop this pattern onto the page and it does their lovely pattern for their single job post. What happens when they want to update that globally? They're all individually stored in the post content of each post. So I can't suddenly make a change and say, the salary block now comes at the bottom, not the top. That's the problem with doing that as well, which is what we've also decided on. And kind of came to the conclusion yesterday that anything in the post editor, that's the content of the post, you can't globally update. So if you want to be able to update a layout and I'm probably talking more specifically like custom post type single templates here, it's got to be in the template, hasn't it? So that you can then change the template and the template gets reflected.
Well, you can use something like reusable. They're not called reusable blocks anymore. What are they called? Sync patterns. To make, so like if you use a sync pattern within your body content, you could make global changes to that. But I think, yeah.
But you can't move that.
No. Exactly.
Across posts.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Yes. Yeah.
So the customer says, you know, I've got them all in my single post. I've got the metadata block for jobs outputting below, you know, the bottom of my description. So the content is the description. And then they want to say, I want to move that to the top on all 3,000 jobs that I've got on the site. Well, you can't, because they're all individually saved in the post content of each post.
Yeah. I think part of the problem is if you think about like editing single templates, so for example, say you've got the site header, that's fine. That's a template part. We won't get into that, but that's a template part. And then say your single template says post title, featured image, and then it's post content, then it's call to action and footer or something like that, right? And it's all beautifully vertically separated in that way. And then you put whatever you want in your post content, and that's your content, and we're all happy. Not all pages are made like that. And what we have found in some of our, like the designs that we have to build out, is that what you might consider part of the template is kind of overlapped with what you might consider is part of the post content. They don't always just separate themselves nicely from a design point of view. So just to say, this whole rectangular full screen section is your content. This whole section above that is part of your template. This whole section below that is part of your template, and it's topped and tailed with the header and the footer. It does that probably works for some designs, but it doesn't. It just doesn't work for us for everything. Like we tried to find an example the other day, didn't we? And one of our client sites had a kind of, I guess you would call it sort of like a hero section of the template, and it had, for argument's sake, like post title, a featured image, but it also has the first paragraph, and then maybe some buttons, some relevant buttons to that post. Now, all in the same rectangle, all in the same box. How do we do that with full site editing? I don't get it. I don't understand. Like for me, it's either you need to add stuff that's part of the template. You said, oh well, we could use the excerpt for that initial paragraph. Yes, we could. But what if, you know, it's a different element or it's a different piece of content? So this kind of idea that we can just separate templates and content cleanly, I don't know. It doesn't exist for me.
It's very difficult, some of those designs that we get them to do, isn't it? I think this is an important comment. There's probably Elliot says there's probably an opportunity to create a plugin that allows you to globally change a pattern when something like the HTML use something like the HTML API to globally update existing patterns. So we had this discussion earlier this morning.
Yeah.
Like if you were a big agency, like there's some big agencies out there that are using, promoting block editors, and rightly so, and they're doing a great job with it. If a client came to them with one of the global updates that I'm suggesting is very difficult, they could just write a script that grabs all the posts and starts to update them all doing that way. Probably something like this. But how long would that, like, we can't do that with our clients. It would take too long. It would be too costly for the client.
People might
doesn't make sense.
Can I give an example of this? Because I thought of one earlier. So recently, Frank Klein had a newsletter where it was like 7 examples of block theme websites, like enterprise level kind of FSC websites or something like that. And I was like, this is cool. This is the kind of content that is really super useful. And I went into some of the sites and I was like, oh, wait till you see. It'll all be custom blocks and like I'll inspect it and it'll be this and that. One of the sites I went to, I was amazed. Like, it was pretty much all core blocks. I was like, wow, that is cool. I wonder how they did this section, this section, this section. So I started inspecting it. And one of the design features of that site is that their section titles are a center-aligned bit of text with 2 lines out either side to the end of the content area. I was like, how do they do that? And they did it by inserting content. So it was grouped in a row block, so a row variation of the group block.
Yeah.
The left and right were either images. I can't remember if they were images. The 2 lines, left and right, with the heading in the middle. If they weren't images, they were something with a border. I can't remember. I'm thinking, you're adding HTML content for design purposes, for pure design purposes. I thought, okay, I don't think that's great. No. I mean, personally, from like a semantic HTML point of view. But then it brings into question, if the design changes even subtly and they don't like that design for their section titles, what the hell do they do about it?
Yeah. What about, I don't like the black line now. I want it to be a dark black line or a grey line.
Or we want
to change that across the site?
We want an underline instead of the lines to the side. Yeah. You can no longer go into a CSS file, look at your H2 or section style class and say, do this instead, save, commit, deploy.
Or like add an element into a template that is pushed across the website.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like you were saying, or we were saying earlier this morning, they probably have the skills and budgets to solve those problems that we don't. But these are the things that I see, and I think I'm kind of a bit of a natural pessimist anyway. And I think these are the kinds of things that I see, these problems, and maybe I over emphasize them in my head. Maybe they're not a big a deal as I make them out to be, but I just see constantly see stuff like this rather than like opportunity. Like, here we've got this new API, we've got this new way of doing things, we've got these new synced over variable patterns. I'm like, yeah, but like, it doesn't do this. I can't do that. It kicks this down the road, it kicks this can down the road or that can down the road or whatever. And it
doesn't really solve problems. I think that's why we've decided not to go with it. It solves a small problem that actually clients don't actually want to solve sometimes. They don't really want to be going and changing their pattern themselves. Anyway, let's move on.
I agree. Just Cameron here says, relying on HTML in the content is not feasible for anything a client will touch. The people who think that's a viable solution haven't worked with clients. Yeah, I mean, these were enterprise-built websites. Maybe the client goes nowhere near the website. I'm sure they don't. From an editing point of view, they've probably got all different workflows. But
But then that begs the question as to why do it like that? Because surely that's harder for the developer. What's the benefit then? Like, is it because the developer can just go into the editor and change it and it's easier than jumping into the code editor? I don't know. Seems strange.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's interesting as well. So sorry to not completely get away from this topic because it feels like we are covering some old ground with some fresh kind of examples. But something that has happened to us more recently is over the summer, in preparation for this, I have been exploring different ways that we might potentially go about this. And one potential way, which kind of came out of left field from me because it came from Mr. Kevin Geary, was that maybe using bricks might be a really good way, like a really good product for us, part of our workflow. And I started watching Kevin's Page Building 101 series, which is actually really quite good. And he uses bricks and it's all like class based, and it felt very developer friendly without actually having to do any development, which was kind of weird. But it was kind of true to like semantics and like web standards.
just for people who probably on the like what actually is Bricks? Surely people listening, I don't know what it is.
A page builder plugin for WordPress.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But class based, so it's hard to kind of describe, but I think most people kind of understand that. But so I can create reusable components, modules, whatever, using CSS classes and either write the CSS for that or just style things using their editor that's only relevant to that class. So you're styling the class of something rather than the individual thing, like the individual block on the page. So it's their take on patterns, I guess. Except that it feels much more semantic and standards based than what WordPress is doing.
Creating that card that we just explained, it's like you're not setting the button styles for everything. You're just setting it for this particular card because of the class thing you've got in it.
So I got
changes. Yeah,
I got a bit like I do. I called myself a pessimist earlier, but I'm very easily excited about things. Like I'm an excitable pessimist. So I got a bit excited about this, but then I was like, hang on a second. There's nowhere in this page building 101 course about clients and what that experience looks like, because the experience I'm looking at on your screen share is a developer experience, not a site or page or content editing experience for a client, which comes around to the fact that Mr. Kevin Geary, the Kevin Geary, as he likes to call himself, doesn't think the clients should edit websites. Our clients do think that they should edit websites. So there's a bit of a discrepancy there. So I tweeted about that. And then I got a reply saying, yeah, but there's this thing called Gutenbricks. I was like, ooh, Gutenbricks. So you can turn your bricks templates or modules or components, whatever, into blocks, native blocks. And then the client can use them in amongst their full site editing experience and everything's beautiful. And I came to you with that. And you kind of cut me down to size like really, really quickly. It's just like popped my balloon, which I'm glad you did. But you're just like, hang on a second. So how is that better than just using ACF?
Exactly.
Like, oh, yeah. And actually using ACF means that we get to actually craft the HTML and the CSS. We don't need to do that in a visual interface. We get to do it writing code. So, yeah.
Sounds better.
So we're back to square one. But we're trying to keep our eyes open. Anyway, on to other things.
Speaking of learning new things, there are a few things that I've spotted and I'm sure people have seen in the community that I thought were definitely worth a mention. I'll go with the one that I was most interested in first, and that was recently Nick Diego posted a link about how to add a link to a WordPress block group. So the group block can have a link so that anything, like a whole group would link to something, which seems sensible. Like you have a card and you add a link to the card because then the whole card can link somewhere. So I thought that was quite interesting. And interestingly, I've clearly learned something about the block editor and building blocks, because I sort of like thought in my head, I wonder how he's done that. I didn't even look at the code. And then I was thinking in my head, so you must have added attributes to the group block, new attributes to hold the link and the target and something else, a destination. I don't know what that was, but anyway. So that was interesting. And then he must have then added some sort of control on the page. They're called inspector controls on the right-hand side. I think these were actually on the toolbar. I don't know what they're called, toolbar controls. So he's added them to then control those attributes or to allow you to set those attributes. And then use the render block filter to change the markup of the group block if the link is present. So I tweeted that to him and he's like, yeah, that's exactly how I've done it. So clearly something's gone in, which is nice. But that looks like a really, really useful block. And lots of people were commenting on his tweet. Why isn't that in core? It probably should be. I think it probably should be. But anyway. But also lots of people saying how complicated it was to to do.
Exactly.
And specifically, the complication was involved in putting the interface for adding the link. It seems as though that seems quite core. There's things in core that do the same, but they couldn't be used in this instance for certain things. So have a read of the blog post. You'll find it online, nickdiego.com. But certainly something that you might want to use in projects. I think that's probably useful.
I do. Nick seems to have a knack, doesn't he, of like picking up on things that would be super useful to add to WordPress. Like his block visibility plugin. He's got a plugin called the icon block, and now this. So he's pretty handy. Yeah,
very handy, definitely. Elliot just said a comment, be interesting to see the code. Wrapping an A on the block element isn't great semantically, so it will be interesting to see the markup that's rendered. It is done so that this works. I believe that the A element is inserted as the first element in the block, and then it allows other links that might be in the block to work as well. So this was discussed on Twitter, so do have a look at the code, Elliot, because I think it actually is aware of that problem, so it hopefully has fixed that problem as well. Because I thought exactly the same. If you wrap the whole card, what if you have a link in the card? It doesn't work, does it? You have a link inside a link.
Yeah,
but he has thought of that and to solve it. So have a look at that. Just quickly, the other thing that caught my eye and I was interested was the latest on the developer.wordpress.org/news, which is all about the new register block template API. So this allows a plugin, and I presume, well, theme wouldn't need to do it because you just put a theme in there. Anyway, there's an API for registering a block template. So if you have a plugin, which the classic example of what you'd need to do with this is if you have a plugin that registers a custom post type, you might want that plugin to provide a template for that post type, and the template for that post type would be like the single template and maybe the archive, and you might want it to provide the block editor template for those, so that the user that is using the plugin can see those in the full site editor, and then they may want to go and make changes to them so that they are appropriate to their theme or their site. So I thought that was a really good idea. I got a bit confused at first because it sounded to me like the name was wrong, but I think Justin responded to my comment. I think I kind of get what it's meaning now, so that's quite good. I still think there's a slight problem with it. I don't really know how you get over it. It's just that you have to include markup in your templates that you don't know what that site is going to use. So the classic is that in your template, you have to say, get template part header, do some wrapping of your content in certain groups or divs, and you don't know what the site is. But I guess that's why the folks can edit it in the site editor and make it appropriate to their site, which would be good. But yeah, it's definitely worth looking at. I thought that was really interesting. And another very well-written article as well from Justin Tadlock, as usual, really explains it very nicely, which is good. Keith.
Yes.
Podcast.
Yeah, Elliot's already mentioned this in the comments. So, yeah,
I'll pop it on the screen. Yeah.
Just wanted to, say that there's a new WordPress podcast coming up. Neither of us are in it. This is going to be Jamie Marsland, aka Poodle Press, and a certain Mr. Kevin Geary joining forces to do a WordPress podcast. A few reasons why this is kind of interesting. One is that they are very different in many ways. Their kind of personality online, very different. Jamie's pretty laid back. Kevin's a little bit more brash, let's say. But also that the way that they use WordPress is very different. So Jamie, now an automatic employee, I think. Doing WordPress.com, or is it .org's media channel? Is it .org?
Yeah, .org.
Doing the YouTube channel for .org. Very much a Gutenberg. I don't want to say fanboy, but like, yeah, his channel's been built up recently about showing people the possibilities and features of the block editor and site editor, versus Kevin, who is very much the current state of WordPress is not good enough. We need to use tools like X, Y, and Z to fill in all the gaps, things like bricks and some of his own products. So yeah, I mean, it's one to watch. My initial reaction, so I think this was announced an hour ago or something, I think. Like Jamie's been kind of building it up, but my initial reaction was, oh, crap. You know, I was really looking forward to listening to this show or watching this show, and now I've got to watch Kevin, who I'm not a personal fan of in terms of his style. Let's just put it like that. I think he's. I do have to be careful what I say. I don't know. Yeah, I'll leave it at that for now. If you've watched Kevin, you probably know what I mean. On the other hand, I think this is perfect. Like, is this not the content that will be both entertaining because they're different and they will presumably clash, hopefully respectfully, but they will presumably clash. But also, if those two different perspectives can come together and find any kind of like common ground and potential ways forward, this could be it could be great for the community. It could be great for the project because they're both, they've both got big audiences. This podcast is probably going to do very, very well, as well as a WordPress podcast can do. So yeah, it's like mixed opinions on it. I'm going to give it a go, but there's only so much Kevin Geary I can take.
I think it's good that opposing sides is the wrong word. Two very different styles of building sites coming together and discussing these things. I hope that's what they're going to do. And discussing these things is good. I think Elliot said I don't think we put this on the screen before, but I know it's frustrating. Like, we're all discussing this and it's frustrating, but it's having these conversations and critical thinking that sometimes bring solutions to these problems. If you sit in your own box, in your own bubble, sometimes you never get to solutions. So hopefully by discussing the good things about what one thinks, the good things about what other things, and coming to some sort of, maybe things will come out of it that'll be good. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But certainly worth a listen, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a listen. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, for sure.
It's called WordPress Unplugged, by the way, if you weren't aware. I don't know where it'll be. I assume, I don't know if it's a .org thing as part of his role with that, or whether it's just something Jamie and Kevin are doing. But
I'm not sure either. Yeah,
follow Jamie and Kevin on X, as it's called. I'm sure you'll be able to find links to it when they release their first episode on the 11th of September, I think it was, it's going to come out, which is on Wednesday next week. So do that.
Cool.
Just finally, before we go, this month's WordPress London meetup takes place on the last Thursday of every month, and I am speaking at that event. So I'm going to talk about our, I don't know if migration's the right word, sort of like shift towards products, building products, selling products, supporting products. And I know we still do projects as well, so it's not quite a complete shift. I'm going to talk about that, how we made that transition, the good, the bad, the ugly, things that work, things that haven't worked, how those products work, etc. So if you're interested in learning that, whether it's something you want to try and do yourself, maybe launch a product, hey, you might find it interesting. It would be awesome if you can attend September the 26th, Thursday evening. I'll be there, obviously. Keith, I think you're coming down as well.
Yeah.
Nice. I can say hello. If you can't attend, I do believe it will be on the WordPress London YouTube channel afterwards, so you can have a watch of it there. But yeah, that's an event for later on this month. I'm really looking forward to it. First time I've been to a meetup for probably 5 years, so it'd be nice to see everyone get back into it. Right, we will wrap it up there. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. As always, give us a like, subscribe to the channel. We will see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.